it was fascinating to listen to the people who had had these mushroom experiences describe them, because you can't really describe them. I've told you before that once in my 20s, early 20s, I had one experience with psychedelic mushrooms. And as I've often said, it was the best day of my life. I hate to say that, but it was. And fundamentally changed who I was, who I am, I guess, forever. Changed the way I see the world, changed the way I process everything, changed the way I filter everything, and all for the good. There wasn't not a single, I can't even come up with anything that would look like a downside. It was the most impactful, useful, completely good thing I've ever done. Now, I don't recommend it, because if you take a bad batch or there's something different about you and you don't have medical supervision, it's a very bad idea to throw some, especially if it's a piece of mushroom. Like, how do you control the dose? The way I did it was I had some that was from exactly the same bunch that some other people had taken the night before. So at least I had the benefit of knowing that they took this much the night before from the same bag. If I take this much, I'll be fine, because they were all fine. And that's what happened. Now, one of the things that they describe is losing your ego. And they all sort of use that language. They say under the psychedelic experience, your ego shatters. Now, I've called it ego death. And I don't know that there's any way to explain that to someone who hasn't experienced it as I have. But I've often said that the secret to success is ego death. And probably mushrooms are not psychedelics are not the only way to accomplish that. I always recommend that you put yourself in embarrassing situations, and maybe even some minor dangerous ones. Because if you can learn to think past protecting yourself, that's at least a little bit similar to releasing your ego. But I would put it this way. You notice how we all see the world through a filter of ourselves? When we're navigating through the world, everything starts with us, and then we interpret the world as how it relates to us, because we're important, and everything revolves around us. When you take mushrooms, you lose that. So you lose the fact that the preferred point of view of reality is you. Rather, you just see the stuff. It's just the stuff without you being important. Now, there's no way to explain what that feels like, but I can tell you it changes everybody forever. And it allows them to get rid of anxiety, allows them to quit addictions, allows them to just sort of enjoy the world. Now, if I had to guess why this helps you with anxiety and why it helps you with addiction, is that the biggest problem in people's life is their ego. Your problem is not the stuff around you, it's how you process it, right? And unless you have a physical health problem or, desperate poverty, there are situations that are real. But beyond that, if you just have a normal life and a job and a life, and you still have anxiety, or you need to do drugs, it's because there's something that is important to you that you need to feed. And that thing that's important to you is you, your ego. Once you lose that as important, you can just enjoy being. Because it's not you you're trying to protect, you're just part of the whole. And once you can enjoy being part of the whole, and you can let your ego die, your anxiety goes away. So too, apparently, does your need for drugs and alcohol and cigarettes. Because you've already satisfied those needs by getting rid of your ego, there's nothing left to protect. There's nothing to feed, there's nothing to drug, there's nothing to change. It just isn't there. So somebody says there's no magic cure. Bullshit. Well, it's you against science. So that's a brave stand you're taking against every single test, every single study. I hope some of you saw my Dr. Drew interview. If not, I tweeted it last night. So you can see it in his feed, Dr. Drew, or mine. So we had a long conversation. I think you'll like it. Did I laugh a lot? Yeah, there's it's sort of nonstop humorous when you're hallucinating. Somebody says, "LOL." Now do the risks. Okay, so the risks, if based on 60 Minutes, is that some people had what they call a bad trip, but apparently nobody had anything that lasted. So as far as we know, the risks were zero, based on all science, all experience, anecdotal, scientific. As far as anybody can tell, the risks are zero. And I don't know if anything else is like that. Now, you have to assume that there must be somebody in the world who would be worse off, because that would be true of aspirin, it would be true of eating peanuts, it would be true of a lot of things. So there's always somebody who's allergic to something, has a bad reaction to something. So if I told you that there's nobody in the world who could ever have a negative, permanent experience with mushrooms, I'd be lying, because 7 billion people in the world, there must be at least one of them who's wired in a way that one trip might break their brain. All I know is that I've never heard of it. In my entire life, I've never heard of it happening once with mushrooms. Other things may be different. All right. Somebody said I've had a terrible trip on mushrooms. Yeah, so there are reports of people who had bad trips on mushrooms. So that's the thing. But there's no lasting damage. It's just a few hours you wish you hadn't done. It's not addictive. I did it once, and like I said, it was the best experience of my life by far. It's not even close to a normal experience, and I've had no real impulse to do it again. Um, I do have some interest in DMT and some other things like that, but I'd only do that under the right supervision, right situation. Um, I had one out of many good. So, oh, there's somebody here who has done it many times and grows them at home. Huh. Um, Somebody said, "How do you know that everyone is different?" How do I know what? I said everyone's different. I said what you said. Um, Twice is better than once? I don't know. I don't know if you need to do it more than once to get the benefits, because I think the people who got the benefits, um, somebody says, don't do DMT. Well, I don't recommend anything to anybody. So if you're not doing it with medical supervision, don't do it. Did you have a shaman present? Not when I did it, no. It was just recreational. Um, I batted 70-50 on shrooms. I don't know what that means. My cousin went full schizophrenic. It can trigger latent mental illness. Well, here's the thing. I hear lots of stories of people who took a drug, and it could be a different drug. I've heard it from marijuana to meth to hallucinogens. And you've even heard it with inoculations, vaccinations. So there are lots of stories of people who were perfectly normal until they had marijuana, a vaccination, LSD, or meth, or whatever. So there's plenty of stories of that. But because there are plenty of people who are going from sane to having an episode, at the same time, there are plenty of people who are trying drugs for the first time or just doing drugs again, you should have lots of false negatives. In other words, in the normal course of just people doing what they're doing, there should be lots of coincidental examples where somebody took a drug and then soon after they had a mental problem. Now, some of it may be cause, and then there may be others that are just coincidence. So I don't know how much is cause and how much is coincidence and all that stuff. Um, yeah, I'm not sure I totally buy the idea that people who did not already have mental illness that would not have come out on its own. Why do we have to do anything? Can't we just learn to problem solve? Nope, apparently not. Meditation and prayer seem much healthier. Well, depending on your problem, you can't meditate and pray away your addiction in one day, but you can take psilocybin, change your life, make you happier and smarter, and get rid of an addiction in one day. So if you could do that with praying, I would definitely recommend the praying, but you can't. Um, so much drug use is self-medication. Yeah. All right. Nothing else for me today. I will talk to you all later.